Witches! Welcome to a brand new week. Thank you so much for joining me. My name's Bee. I have been a practicing hedge witch for 12 years, and I am going to be talking about some beginner concepts, some Witchcraft 101. Today we are going to be focusing on the 5 elements of witchcraft and calling circle with them. So without further ado, let's begin. Now today we're going to be talking about the 5 Western elements. Those are earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. And we use all 5 of these within witchcraft to create magic, to connect with our planet, as well as to create sacred spaces by calling circle. So when you call circle, you address each one of the elements in their various directions, which we'll get into, don't worry. And you ask them to join you in your sacred space to create an area of protection around you while you are doing ritual workings, while you are praying, if you're feeling anxious. I call circle literally all the time. It just really is something that grounds me. And it gives me a series of steps to follow and to kind of distract my mind from whatever is going on. Or alternatively, it gets me into the headspace that I need to be in when I am doing ritual work and when I am doing like a spell or a tarot reading, whatever that might be. Not all witches call circle, so if this is not part of your practice, that is perfectly fine. Alternatively, other cultures might have other elements that they work with, and those are really significant to them. So the best example I can think of is the wuxing, which comes from China, or you might have seen this prominently featured in Chinese medicine, but their elements include fire, water, wood, metal, and earth. So it is a little bit different, and the elements of importance to you might be based upon your spiritual practices, or even cultural practices. Today we're going to be talking about the Western elements. These are the ones that are the most prevalent in Western witchcraft. So that's why we're talking about them. Now, there are many ways of calling in the elements to your circle. I encourage you to be as creative as possible, but generally they start with some sort of salutation, a statement of intent to call the elements in. Then going in a clockwise direction, you'll start at one element somewhere on the compass and then move in a clockwise direction to the next one until you completely come back to the beginning. Now, in my personal practice, being an earth sign, I always start with the element of earth, which is associated with the direction of the north. I also find that starting at the north and going around, it's kind of like traveling on a clock. I don't know, it makes my brain happy, so that's why I do it that way. Now, if you are a Wiccan, you might have instructions to start with the east. It is very common for Wiccans to start with east, which is associated with air, then moving to the south, which is fire, west, which is water, and then finally ending at north, which is earth. So if your practice requires that, definitely do whatever your practice dictates or your religion dictates. But I always start with the north. I'm an earth sign. I like to start with the element of earth. It's my personal preference. Do whatever feels the best for you. You're coming back to the same point anyways. A circle is literally just like a line that has no end, right? Isn't that a whole song? So I find that for me personally, it doesn't necessarily matter where I start. I just tend to start with earth. Let's talk about some of the attributes or correspondences associated with this element. So earth is an element that is associated with the zodiac signs of Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. So if that is your zodiac sign, you might feel a little bit more called to interacting with the element of earth. I personally am a Virgo, in case you couldn't tell. Hello. If you're interested in tarot reading and tarot cards, the suit of the minor arcana, I should say, that is associated with this are the pentacles, sometimes illustrated as the coins. The element of earth is really associated with grounding, with strength, with healing, with stability, with sturdiness, with fertility, also with death and rebirth, and of course, nature and the things that sustain us, so plants and animals, etc. Deities associated with the element of earth include nature deities, matriarchal or mother deities, maybe a creatrix deity, the goddess who created the universe and whatever pantheon you so follow. Chthonic deities, or deities that dwell underground or are associated with death or the underworld, and deities associated with crafts and forging things. So I'm talking like Hephaestus and Brigid the smith, yes. Some of the entities that are associated with the element of earth include gnomes, as well as any sort of nature spirit, such as a dryad, the tree spirits from Greek mythology or fauns like Mr. Tumnus from Narnia, but also also Western European mythology. But the gnomes specifically are seen as kind of like the elemental that is associated with the element of earth. So if you're interested in elementals, definitely that is like a really great like keyword. So the elementals. Colors that are associated with the element of earth include greens, browns, blacks, golds, anything that is really like that earthy. I often associate copper with earth, but that could also be more towards fire depending on your tradition. If you were a kitchen witch, you might use items such as bread, potatoes, carrots, root vegetables, nuts, oats, rice, and various other kind of like grains to symbolize the earth in your practice. If perhaps you're cooking up a spell and want to embody all of the elements with your ingredients, choosing something that reminds you of like the earth or perhaps is grown deep in the earth is really, really wonderful, and I encourage you to do so. If you are interested in herbalism, some herbs and plants that are associated with the element of earth include oak, ivy, sage, patchouli, very much associated with the element of earth, nuts or seeds of any kind, moss, lilac, any sort of like lichen or things that grow close to the ground. I also very much associate mushrooms with the element of earth. And again, any sort of grain or root I would consider associated with the element of earth. If you are an animal lover, you can connect with animals that are associated with this element. Animals such as bears, wolves, ants, like little tiny guys, they live in the earth, yay. Horses, think about that stability. Deer, cows or bulls, snakes, worms, voles, anything that lives underground, anything that burrows, maybe those cute little burrowing owls from that like early 2000s movie about burrowing owls that I can't remember the name of. But yes, anything that really dwells on the land or perhaps inside of the land is very much associated with this beautiful element. And finally, for tools that you can use to represent the element of earth on your altar, the traditional one is the pentacle, which is often a flat disc with a 5-pointed star on it enclosed in a circle. That is a pentacle. These can be carved of wood, made out of metal, made out of clay, whatever you so choose, and that's usually just on your altar as a representation of the element. You can use this pentacle to charge items. Now, personally, I tend to keep things a little bit more literal by using actual crystals that are associated with my intention for whatever working that I'm doing, whether that just be a regular little spell or a full ritual to celebrate a holiday or perhaps a moon phase of some kind. New moon and full moon are usually what I do. But yeah, so I tend to be a little bit more literal with that, but if you are not really interested in crystals, a pentacle or something else that is really very much associated for you with the planet is perfectly fine as well. Next on our list is the element of air, which is associated with the direction of the east. In the zodiac, the air signs are Gemini, which is actually the current sign that we are in. So if you are a Gemini, happy birthday, as well as Libra and Aquarius. The tarot suit associated with the element of air actually kind of depends on your tradition. Personally, I see it as the element associated with the wands. However, more traditionally, it is associated with the suit of swords. And the reason that I associate it with the suit of wands is because in witchcraft, the tool most associated with the element of air is the wand. So this means I might interpret cards a little bit differently, but throughout the tarot, generally speaking, the meanings of each of the cards is pretty similar, no matter what perspective you're coming at it from. So yeah. So the element of air is associated with intelligence, wisdom, communication, creativity, intuition, and memory or inspiration as well. So if you're doing any sort of working that is associated with those things, you might want to focus more on the element of air over the other elements that you're bringing into your ritual. Deities associated with this element, of course, include air or perhaps wind or storm deities. Deities associated with birds specifically, so we see this a lot in like ancient Egyptian pantheons. Deities associated with learning or enlightenment or knowledge, as well as oracular deities or deities that have to do with prophecy or prophesy. Entities related to the element of air include sprites, sylphs, which are kind of like an invisible air spirit. Again, look up the elementals. Fairies, stuff like that, anything that flies really. Though not dragons, that's associated with fire, and we'll get to that. Some colors associated with the element of air include yellow, gold, white, any sort of light color, pastels I really associate with the element of air. If you are a kitchen witch, I tend to use the element of air by using aromatic herbs in my recipes, but you could also use any sort of like kind of light food, if that makes sense. So I always associate like spring foods, maybe salads, cabbages, stuff like that, cabbage-based things, very much associated with the element of air. But again, for me, it's really those aromatic herbs and that like, I don't know, cultivation of a scent that really just goes throughout the house. And just, I love aromatic stuff so much. Some herbs that I do really like that are associated with the element of air include lavender, marjoram, again, sage. Sage is very used throughout witchcraft, though I do recommend getting common sage, not white sage, as white sage is not only very sacred to indigenous people in the Americas, so Native Americans, it is also endangered, so we should protect it. Common sage you can find at your grocery store and it works perfectly fine, trust me. Some animals associated with the element of air include birds, flying insects, anything that flies throughout the skies, so bats, stuff like that, all very much associated with the element of air. And then finally, some tools that are, you know, you can use in your practice include the broom, which is used to kind of sweep away negative energy, which is very cool. The bell for its association with sound and sound cleansing, so that is associated with the element of air. Again, the wand, like I was saying, is associated with this element, as well as any sort of incense that you might want to be burning. So that is a really great way to bring the element of air into your practice. I love incense. My favorite one is frankincense. Oh, so good. Also associated with the element of air, by the way. But yeah, those are just some tools that you can use to connect further with this element. Next, to the south, we have the element of fire. And in the zodiac, the fire signs are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. In tarot, the suit of fire either rules the wands or the swords, just depending on what you believe. Again, for me, I find that because swords are so associated with like conflict, I associate them implicitly with the element of fire, which also just kind of gives me this like very intense, very like conflict-y vibes. It can, truly. Fire is very much associated with energy, with, again, strength and courage, with destruction and rebirth, like, you know, through the fire, you are reborn, whatever. It is associated with lust and sexuality, as well as transformation, action, and movement, which is really like why I associate it more with the swords, I think, than the wands, but that's a topic for another day. Deities that are associated with the element of fire include solar deities like Ra or Apollo, maybe some fire deities. Again, deities that are associated with the hearth, or perhaps with like crafts and craftsmanship. Deities that are associated with the element of fire include salamanders, so again, that is another type of elemental, and dragons. Who doesn't love a good dragon? The colors associated with fire, of course, are red, yellow, orange, gold, white, and I also include like dark blue, kind of like the bottom of the flame, but that's a personal thing. You don't have to include that. For my kitchen witches, you might want to experiment with some spicy foods, with some foods that are more acidic, so like onion or garlic, vinegar. Cloves and cinnamon are also very common to use in baking, to use to represent the element of fire. Anything that's kind of red or orange or yellow can be used to kind of represent this element in your cooking or in your recipes. If you are more into the herbalism side of that, maybe focusing on herbs such as cinnamon, cloves, ginger is a really good one, cacti, so if you have like cacti around your house and are a plant witch, that is also associated with the element of fire, and they're sharp, which is why I'm still stuck on this. Anyways, it's fine. Peppers or anything acidic is also very much associated with this element, so anything that really is like spicy or maybe like bites back, even black pepper, I would say, is very associated with this element of fire. Some animals associated with this element include snakes, foxes, lions, bees, scorpions, horses, tigers, and then some tools that you might want to use to represent this include the athame, which is a triangular shaped knife with blades on both sides. This is a lot more commonly used in Wicca and other like very like established earth-based religions, but if you have an athame in your practice, that is awesome. Also very much associated with this element are candles, which is one of my favorite tools. I love using candles during my workings. In fact, I almost always have all of the lights off and have my altar lit specifically by candles because I feel more connected to the element of fire that way, and it just makes everything a lot more like atmospheric, and it allows me to get into the headspace that I need to be in to perform that spell or that ritual. So yeah. All right, we're coming up on the last two. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me so far. The next element that we're going to talk about is the element of water, which is associated with the West. So in the zodiac, the water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And in the tarot, the element of water rules the suit of cups. The element of water is associated with emotion, intuition, love, the subconscious. It's associated with cleansing, with tranquility, and inner reflection as well. The deities that might be associated with this element include oceanic deities, or deities associated with water of some kind, as well as deities associated specifically with healing, and I would even say sometimes like lunar deities, because the element of water and the moon are just so closely and intrinsically linked if we think about the tides. So if you work with the lunar deity, you might also feel very connected to that element of water. Now, entities associated with the water include undines, which is kind of like a mermaid slash water spirit, nymphs, the lady of the lake, or anything similar from your tradition, whatever that might be. Some colors associated with the element of water include blue, silver, white, any sort of shade of blue. Now, kitchen witch wise, water is definitely one of the easiest elements for us to consume. So by using this element in your cooking, adding in water, maybe even brewing teas, or focusing on fruits that are really water heavy, such as watermelon or strawberries or various berries, grapes, stuff like that. Great way to connect with that element of water. But if you're not a kitchen witch, you're more into herbalism, consider using things that come from the water, such as seaweed, things that have a lot of water in them, including like aloe or succulents, anything that really contains water in general. So like coconut is a really great one also to be used in the kitchen, but as well as like gardenia, things that grow close to water, so maybe like catnip or cattails. Now, of course, all marine animals are associated with this element of water, but I also want you to think about some of those amphibious animals, maybe frogs or toads, as well as animals such as waterfowl that do dwell near water. Now, there are some tools that are associated with this element of water, namely the cup or chalice, which holds liquids, as well as the cauldron. So sometimes the cauldron is associated with the element of earth because it's seen as kind of like a womb in which you put things in and then other stuff comes out, which I totally understand. In my practice, I find the cauldron and the chalice to be interchangeable tools for me. So if that works for you, awesome. Now, finally, we have arrived at the fifth element. And no, I am not talking about that movie from the 90s with Bruce Willis. I'm talking about the element of spirit. Now, notice we have come kind of full circle. We ended at the west. The next direction would be north, which is the earth again. And that is because the element of spirit encompasses us at all times. The element of spirit is actually really hard to define, but often when I am calling circle, I ask it to come from within, because I see the element of spirit being like our own personal power, our own personal consciousness and connection with the universe around us. But it is associated with all signs on the zodiac. It is associated with all of the major arcana cards, this element is, as well as transcendence, joy, self-awareness, enlightenment, unity, selflessness. It's really kind of that sense of collective, I guess, that I get when I am doing either a group ritual or even like a solitary one, that feeling of connection to the universe around me. Ah, so good. There aren't necessarily any tools that you can use beyond just being present and being there in your working, but you might want to use symbols such as like the infinity sign. A spiral is like my favorite symbol, just because it's like this constant, cycle that we all go through. It's really representative of that. Colors associated with this element are white, silver, purple, and black. If you're a kitchen witch, you can incorporate this element by stirring love into everything that you make. And if you are more into herbalism, I would focus on herbs that are spiritually significant to you, or maybe have been historically spiritually significant. Alternatively, I would consider herbs that might alter your mind. Cannabis, tobacco. Blue lotus is a really good one that the ancient Egyptians used to use. Sometimes mugwort or mullein are said to like open up your mind to receiving messages from beyond. Whatever that might look like for you, it doesn't have to be that. It can be, of course, other spiritually significant herbs, but those are associated with the element of spirit. And again, in terms of the tools, there aren't really tools. Like, you as a witch are your best tool, but you might want to incorporate some symbols that are associated with like the infinite, or like, you know, just a simple circle is perfectly fine. So yeah, that is my little spiel on the elements. To call in circle, it's pretty simple. I address each one of the elements and state the direction from which I call them. So I call in the element of earth from the north to join me in a circle of protection is a perfect, valid statement for casting circle. You'll repeat that statement with all of the elements, or if you want, you can definitely, you know, jazz it up a little bit. Maybe maybe adding some words of intention. So joining me in the circle tonight to aid me in my working, or to bring me peace and clarity, whatever that might be. And when you have worked through all 5 elements, I always leave spirit for the last. That is traditional, but if you want to do another way, perfectly fine. Now, spirit generally is called in last in the order of things, so you'll go through the physical elements and then finally calling in that element of spirit. Now, at the end of the working, when I'm ready to close the circle or open the circle, depending on how you're looking at it, I will, again, starting with the north, I will move counterclockwise. So I'll go backwards. This is a personal practice. You don't have to do it that way. Please cast and close or open circle, however your personal spiritual path dictates, if you do have one specifically. So I'll start with the north, and then again, come back to the north, going through all of the elements, and then finally release spirit, because it's, you know, something that can be released into the ether. Usually I will end each portion, both casting and opening or closing circle, with a statement of intent. So generally speaking, I will say, may the circle be cast as I will it, so shall it be. Firstly, I'll say, may the circle be open as I will it, so mote it be. You can say something to that effect if you have a specific statement that you would like to use again instead, perfectly fine. So yeah, that is my little spiel on the elements and casting circle. I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.